Hey, Matt, throw some water.
I got it. You need one too?
No, I've got one down here. But it's a non-Pepsi water, so I'm keeping it below the table.
Thanks,
Is
Bill.
this Pepsi water?
Just like RSL.
Better be. It came from inside this building. Welcome into the Smiths Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, coming to you live from the Eccles Football Building here on the campus of the University of Utah as we get you ready for game week in Utah versus Northern Illinois, which comes your way 5:30 on Saturday night right here on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700. And, of course, all along the lines on Learfield. We'll talk about Northern Illinois. We'll do a quick recap coming up today on the Weber State game, what Kyle liked and what he didn't like. The Barton brothers will swing by. Cody and Jackson Barton will come by here today, and we'll talk to them a little bit. And, of course, we'll answer some of your questions if you ever want to get in touch with the show. A couple of ways to do it. You can text into the program at 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Or you can hit me up on Twitter, on my Twitter handle, at ESPN700Bill. And if you have any questions for Coach, we'll get them that way, and we'll answer some of those coming up in just a bit. Kyle Whittingham, good evening to you. How are you?
Doing good, Billy. How are you?
Doing okay. You survived first week, got that nice win in your back pocket, had a weekend to look back on it and get the batteries recharged just a little bit. So give me a quick thought on what you liked about the Weber State game the most. The first game in college football is always hard because you don't have a preseason like they do in the pros.
Exactly. I would say that without question the defensive effort was outstanding. And that was from start to finish. You know, we started strong and maintained that throughout the entire game. You know, I mentioned after the game we failed to generate a takeaway, but Weaver was playing it very close to the vest. Quarterback did a nice job protecting the ball, but consequently we weren't able to get much going. But that can't happen many weeks. You know,
right.
If we don't take the ball away, then we're not doing our job on defense, and we're at -4 on the turnover margin, which is, you know, that's a disastrous stat. So we're able to overcome that. Special teams, mixed bag. You know, we made some field goals. We had one block. We blocked one of our own. Mitch executed a fake on fourth down that was built into the system. It wasn't called from the sidelines. He just saw it and took it, which stole a possession for us. Let's see what else we had. You know, just some good things going on special teams, but offensively, not consistent enough.
Right.
We're hot and cold. You know, we started off very poorly, then we rallied, and then we slowed down again, and then we picked it up again. So I'd like to see more consistency throughout the entire game on offense.
Let's start with your defense for a minute. I know you didn't get the takeaway that you wanted, but I think that's not going to happen very often. But also holding a team to 58 yards, 59 yards of total offense isn't going to happen very often either. It's one of those. You didn't get that turnover, but if I told you you're going to hold a team under 100 yards of total offense, you'll probably take that with no turnovers, right?
Every week,
yeah.
That's not realistic.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen. So that being the case, that turnover margin is so critical, and it's something that we've got to win. We usually do win it, but it wasn't the case that we were able to overcome it on Thursday night.
They had 13 yards passing. Your secondary gave them really no room to operate. But what was very noticeable early was your defensive line, and especially the interior of that defensive line. Penasini and Tonga and Fotu and Pututau were all getting good penetration. Once you had them locked up at the line of scrimmage, I think you had to feel pretty good about your effort that night on defense, right?
We did. And it all starts with the run defense. Most every week there are some exceptions. But most weeks, you got to stop the run, force them in the third long, and get after the quarterback. we were doing just that on Thursday night. And in the secondary, like I said, there was nowhere to put the ball. And those guys were in tight coverage and made several plays on the ball. And were in great position virtually every single passing rep.
I guess the upside to that, too, is you were able to get some guys, especially your twos, some pretty good reps in the second half. You had a lead. You kept your offense in a little bit longer, but your defense, I saw guys like Josh Nurse out there in the second half, getting him some real game reps. Really his first chance to have game reps as a defensive back, and Terrell Burgess out there and some of these other guys. So that's an upside because you know what your frontline guys like Guidry and Julian Blackman and Jalen Johnson are going to do, but getting those second-team guys reps was pretty big.
It was, and we were able to do more of that on D than we were on O. We wanted to make sure we tried to get some rhythm and continuity in offense, so we kept those guys in there a little bit longer. But you're right, we're going to need those guys at some point, and if nothing more than just for depth, we started playing some teams that are high tempo, and you've got to have some guys you can roll through there, and so it was good to see those guys get some experience.
Speaking of rhythm and continuity, your offensive line was kind of a talking point through fall camp. You were trying to fill that one last position, and we saw Nick Ford and Orlando Umana doing good work for you on Thursday night. They didn't get probably the push you wanted early, but something changed about midway through the first half because you began to be able to run the football a little bit. I don't know if that was a talking to from Jim Harding, if it was just settling into game mode, but where did you see that turning point and see that offensive line begin to exert its will?
Yeah, it was about the third or fourth drive. We started to settle in and get on our blocks and get some movement and create some space for Zach and running backs. And so we did start out kind of I don't want to say lethargic, but we weren't very crisp those first couple series.
You get some young guys sometime, and we mentioned some of those backups, but true freshmen. Solomon Enos had a couple of nice grabs, drew a PI. Mika Tafua, who you liked through fall camp, got in there and made some plays. And he's not a freshman, but he's a redshirt freshman. Jason Shelley came in late in the game and did some nice things for you, too. Right. How important is it to get those young guys? I know you've said we're probably not going to have as many true freshmen or even redshirt freshmen contributing this year as we did last year, but getting those guys some reps in a game like that.
It's important, and we had several. As you mentioned, we had the two tight ends, Keithy and Fotheringham contribute. Miki you talked about. Nick Ford, just a redshirt freshman, the guy, our starting left guard, co-starter. Solomon Enos, he was Bronson Boyd, redshirt freshman.
Jalen Dixon.
And on defense, not quite as many. It's more upperclassmen on defense, but it's going to be valuable. Like I said, it speaks to I think the recruiting efforts of those last few years.
How'd you feel like Tafua played on that edge overall, both in the run and the pass game?
He played well. And I think he's going to get nothing but better. He's a tough kid. He's field strong. He's very stout in there, and he's got good size, nearly 6'4" and 250 plus pounds, and he's a good complement opposite Bradley.
All right, we've got to take our first time out tonight here on the Coaches Show, which is brought to you by Bud Light, the official sponsor of Utah Athletics. When we come back, we'll give out our weekly player awards. We'll read some questions from you guys for Coach Kyle Whittingham and talk a little bit about Northern Illinois. We'll also talk to the brothers Barton when they get in here in just a few minutes as well. All that coming up on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's, right here from Learfield. Back to college football indeed. Britton Covey last week made his imprint pretty quickly on that game. We welcome you back into the Smith's Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. And tonight's show brought to you by Wells Fargo, proud supporter of the Utes and dedicated to helping people reach their goals on and off the court. Wells Fargo, together we'll go far. That was a pretty impressive run.
That was. It was improvisation.
Yeah, that's the right word.
For Britton, he's good at that. I mean, he'll find a way to make a play, just like he's been doing all his life.
I was most impressed by the fact that he got his glove off.
Yeah.
As he was coming around to take on the motion play, he knew it was going to be a pass, so he shifted that thing off his hand, and he was ready to go.
Yeah, he's a heads-up kid, and you get the ball in his hands, and usually good things happen.
How many times? I mean, do you have when you go into games with guys like Zach and Britton, guys that you know are your playmakers? Do you have a number of touches kind of in mind, ballpark, where you guys would like to get them each game?
Yeah, I think ballpark, but a lot of that depends on how they're playing you. You know, if they're playing you, 7 or 8 in the box and single high safety, then the run game's not going to be as prevalent as throwing the football. And if they're playing split safety looks and thinning the box out, then you're going to get more opportunities in the run game. So it's give and take, but yeah, you want to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. That's what offense is all about.
Your best playmaker may have been Zach Moss the other night. He was awfully good, and I'll tell you what, he talked all fall long about putting 10 pounds on Kyle. It looked like he lost 15 pounds because what we saw the other night was, we've seen the physicality of Zach Moss. What we saw the other night was the speed of Zach Moss and really pulling away from those defenders.
Yeah, he's sub 4.5. I mean, he's in the 4.4s when we time him in the 40s, and he's added nothing but great weight, and some guys get bigger, but it's kind of a mixed bag, a little bit of fat, a little bit of muscle, but he's all muscle, and like I've been saying, I believe he's an elite back.
Well, he has all the looks of it right now and had one of the best weekends of anybody in the Pac-12 Conference. Let's get to our University of Utah Team Player of the Week, brought to you by University of Utah Healthcare and Sports Medicine. You had a lot of guys who had good weeks for you, both offense. Although I will say, I think the offensive guys may have stood out a little bit more than the defensive guys, because I thought you had a lot of guys on defense that were all good, but nobody necessarily that stood out head and shoulders above the rest, where on offense there were 2 or 3 guys that had really big nights for you.
There was, and on defense, John Penasini would have been the guy. He played solid. He played his best game as a Ute. He's only been here a little over a year, but that was by far his best production. And he shed a bunch of weight. He was like 330 last year. He's 310 now, and moving much better and playing much better. But you're right. Zach was the focal point of the offense, and just, what do you have, 150 on 16 carries? So
yeah, I don't think you played him in the second half, or maybe a series in the second half at the most.
Bit, just a little bit, and so he's close to 9 yards a carry, or whatever that equates to, and so he's a guy that we're going to need to lean on all season long.
Of your other, and he'll be our Team Player of the Week this week, brought to you by University of Utah Healthcare, where they've got 16 convenient neighborhood health centers and a game plan for your family's health. You can visit them online at uofuhealth.org. Your backup running backs. What did you think of guys like Shine and Brumfield and Green? How did they fare the other night when you graded them out?
Well, Armand is, he's a proven commodity for us. He was so good for us a couple of years back, and had a little trouble in pass protection. In fact, the one that Tyler threw the pick on was, a combination of needing to be a little better in pass protection with the tight end and the running back. So he missed some time after that because of that. But he's a guy that we know he's capable of playing at this level. TJ Green was impressive as well. Coach McDonald has done a nice job with him, and because he really is a guy that has just improved so much since he got here. He's a redshirt freshman now, and the improvement he's made over last year has been tremendous. And then we've got of course DHC is on the shelf with
right.
But then our true freshman Devin Brumfield, he looks like he's got some promise.
Boy, he had some impressive numbers in high school, and he played at the 5A level in Louisiana, which is a high-end, very good high school football. 6,000 yards and 70 touchdowns. Three straight years, I believe, is all state in Louisiana.
Yep. Very productive, and he's a hard worker too. He's a guy that practices the right way every single day, and is very attentive to detail, and I think he's got a bright future here.
Well, the running back situation looked very, very good. We've got to get to our Subway sub of the game. The Subway sub of the game brought to you by our friends at Subway Restaurants. You played a lot of guys, so you had time to be able to play backups, and you might have had some guys that stepped in and played. Who would you go with your backup or sub of the week?
Well, we'll go with John Penasini, because he's not a starter. It was Howard Pututau and Lecky Fotu were the starters last week, and John came in and gave us 30, 35 really good reps and graded out exceptionally well. And he was our in-house defensive player of the week.
So he'll be our Subway sub of the week.
Yep.
Is that going to be a case where maybe John gets the start this week because you can base it on their effort and their play in the game and practice?
Yeah, all four of those guys are pretty much on equal footing. Lecky's probably the guy that's got the top guy in the hierarchy, but the other three are right there behind him, and it really is inconsequential who starts because all four of them are going to give us good reps.
I talked to John yesterday here at the press conference in this room right over there, and I asked him, I said, your journey to Utah was not necessarily an easy one. He went to West Jordan High School. He didn't have the grades coming out of high school to come here, but his dream was always to be a Ute. He had to go to Snow College. It's not the first time we've said that about Utah defensive linemen.
Right.
You've got a pretty good record of getting those guys out of there, but he said, it made me work a little bit harder, and he goes, I appreciate it more now because I had to work a little bit harder for it.
Right, and he did his job over at Snow, getting his academics in order, and he's been a great student since he's been here, and he's a guy that we're excited to have. He was a little bit leery when we recruited him last year because we're so deep at defensive line, but I said, John, just trust me. You're going to come here. It'll be a good experience for you. And so we ended up coming, and I think he's really excited about it.
It was your first game having Gary back on the sideline with you, and coaching those defensive line guys along with Lewis Powell. How was that?
It's great, to have Gary, as a resource, not only all week long, but on game day is terrific. And him and Lewis have got those guys at least last Thursday night playing very well.
Now they'll have to play well again this week against Northern Illinois. And Kyle and I will talk about Northern Illinois coming up here in just a minute. This question in tonight from the Sojo Ute on my Twitter account at ESPN 700 Billy says, what's your game day prep routine? What's your game day routine? Meals, music, TV, exercise, etc. What do you do on game day?
Me personally, or the team itself?
You.
Well, it depends on when we kick off, first of all, because there are various kickoff times. Predominantly it's in the evening, and so you got a long day. Always try to get a workout in at some point. You look for the windows of opportunity.
Well, that's your everyday routine. That isn't just game day.
But it's you got to strategically place it there between the meals. And for example, we have a 6:30 kick, which is this week. It was 6 last week, 6:30 this week. We'll let the players sleep in, get them up, have breakfast, come and go as they please, and breakfast for about a 2-hour window, 8 to 10. 10 o'clock, we have a team walk. Right after that, we go to kick meetings. Right after that, we go to OD meetings, and we give them some downtime to just relax, take a nap in the room. Then we have pregame meal anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours prior to the game, depending on how the schedule lays out. And right after the pregame meal, we have a quick team meeting, get on the bus and go. So and the days are, really much more bearable on Saturdays when you kick off late than a Thursday because there's no football on to watch.
Right.
If you got games on all day, it makes the time pass pretty quickly. But when you got nothing but soap operas or whatever the heck's on during a normal day, which I don't even know, that makes that day seem quite long.
Are you into game film and game tape during the day on a Saturday at the hotel, or are you kind of keeping an eye on some other games that are going on?
Yeah, I am. I go back and forth. There's always some things you can, something goes through your head, and you think of a formation and what did they do out of that form? Just going back and review it. And the preparation never stops. That's something we stress to our players. One of our adages here is the hay is never in the barn. You're preparing all the way to the ball's in the air, and then you go into game mode. But until that point, you never stop preparing.
So, Joe, thank you for that question. You guys can hit me up. We'll ask some more questions of Kyle a little bit later on at ESPN 700 Bill or on the text line at 877-353-0700. Before I let you go grab a bite to eat and we bring up the brothers Barton.
Interesting group, a couple of guys. That's a whole group. There's more of them.
Well, I was going to say there's a couple more. There's at least one more perhaps on the way. I watched a little vignette on the Pac-12 Network the other night that they said the younger brother might be the best of the group. You can't comment on that.
I can't comment on that. I'll tell you right now, the best athlete in the family is the mom. She's hands down the best dad. 2-sport first-team all-conference here at Utah. I mean, who does that?
Not very many people do that.
Not very many people.
Well, Dad was pretty good. These two aren't too bad either.
They can't hold a candle.
And of course,
Ricky
Danny's a heck of a volleyball player too. So
they're all great athletes. I'm just saying who the best is.
Was the recruitment of those two guys easy or not?
It was the usual. You recruit them the right way and show them love and let them know how important they are to you. And Jackson committed very early. I think he was a sophomore when he committed. And then Cody was, you know, a guy that wanted to be here as well, but had some, you know, they both had good offers, and so it was good to get them both in the program, and they've been great for us.
Well, you've been seeing these guys for a long time because
we'll miss them too. They're going to both graduate.
I was going to say, you were down to Brighton High School watching your son play, so you've probably seen these guys for a long time.
I have been watching these guys for a long time, and with Cody not redshirting, they, you know, Jackson's a year older, but they'll finish up together this year.
All right, we'll talk to them next. I'm going to guess Jackson goes first because he's the old. No, you want to let? Wow. Okay, I'm giving him the honors, and he's making Cody go first. So Cody will be up first, and then we'll come back on the other side and talk to Jackson after that. Just a reminder, by the way, that all of our broadcasts this year and all the touchdowns on our broadcast are brought to you by Pepsi and Mountain Dew Code Red. Get into the game with a Pepsi, proud partner of Utah Athletics. Back with Cody Barton next. This is Utah football from Learfield. A lot of guys had good nights the other night as we welcome you back into the Coaches Show. The Coaches Show tonight brought to you by Nissan. Nissan knows game day is all about the game-winning drive, so the Rogue has been available with technologies that help make the day's best drive getting to the stadium. Nissan, proud supporter of college athletics. Cody Barton with us here on the Coaches Show tonight. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Peter Tonga had a sack right there. I was saying to Coach a little earlier, I thought defensively it was hard to pick out who had the best game the other night because you guys all played so well. There was, sometimes there'll be like a Cody Barton has 12 tackles and 3 tackles for loss, or, Julian Blackman has a couple of interceptions. But I thought across the board the other night, you guys gave a great effort. I think everybody that got on the field seemed to make a play.
Yeah, the defense played very well, at least from what I saw. a lot of their drives were 3 and outs, and so it was just hard to tell. Like you said, it's kind of hard to tell, but like Coach said earlier, John Penasini had a great game. I thought Marquise Blair had a great game. Chase Hansen had a pretty good game too. I mean, there was a lot of dudes flying around everywhere. I mean, but overall, just as a whole defense, it was a good collective game.
Did Cody Barton have a good game?
Yes, I think I had a good game.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Well, sometimes you're your hardest critic. What did you like about what you did the other night? Was there any errors that maybe you noticed that maybe we wouldn't have?
Maybe a couple little things like a small false step here or there,
Right.
but overall, I was most happy with my pass drops. I thought those were pretty clean. I didn't have a ton of opportunities to make big plays, but I did my job and I felt good with that.
Well, some of that had to do with the way Weber played you guys. They seemed to be very conservative. They didn't take a lot of shots. They didn't really give you guys that opportunity to make a ton of big plays, did they?
Yeah, no, they played pretty vanilla, like we thought they would. We talked about it. We thought they might play vanilla, and so they did. And we just went with what they gave us.
I think 58 yards. The numbers changed. It was 61, then it was 55. I think we settled on 58 yards.
Was it 58?
Have you ever had a game like that? Go back to high school. Go back to Pop Warner. Can you ever remember having a game where you held the other team to double digits in yardage?
I don't think so. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You guys had a good game the other night.
Yeah, no, it felt good. As a defense, every single time it was, like I said earlier, 3 and outs and, not very tiring on the defensive side.
So what changes this week? You've seen Northern Illinois a little bit now on tape. You guys are in practice this week. What's going to be a little bit different? I'm guessing they're a little step up in talent. They're in a little bit bigger school. They're in a little bit bigger conference. So what have you seen from Northern Illinois?
They play hard. They're a good team. I know they were a 12 personnel team. They like to do power row and stuff like that. But from what we've heard, 2 guys are down. So they might spread it out a little bit and use some speed guys. And so their running backs are pretty good and their O-line's pretty big dudes and they like to hit. And so it's going to be a good game.
It's funny you mentioned speed because a lot of people were pointing at the game the other night and giving up 58 yards to anybody's outstanding. And sometimes it's hard to tell. You guys were clearly a more talented team than Weber. But the one thing that seemed to translate and was very noticeable from my perch in the broadcast booth and when I went back and watched it on TV is the speed. And I know you guys have been focusing on this defense this fall and the ability to rally to the ball, but it really felt like, do you guys have a sense of that on the field when you're really getting after it and there's a sense of team speed?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it as like a pack of wild dogs, but, we take pride in being smart, nasty football players and being flying to the ball, flying around everywhere we go. And in practice, it's always anywhere the ball goes, you burst to the ball where everyone's sprinting always. And it's almost like a race to the ball. And so, yeah, speed's a big thing for us.
Linebacker room's gotten a little more crowded now. We talked about you and Chase a lot during the fall, but Francis Bernard's come in. Donovan Thompson's back. Devin Lloyd's a redshirt freshman. Bryant Pirtle's around as well. You've gone from being kind of shallow to pretty deep. What's that linebacker room like right now?
With the depth that it has, it's great. I mean, like you said, those guys that are in there, it's a lot more teaching as a whole group. I've been in there with a lot of guys that now, in the past I've been in there, it feels empty, like a graveyard. And so with a lot of guys in there, it's a lot of fun. And as a group, we're all very close linebackers. And having depth at linebacker position is it's a good thing because if one guy goes down, we have guys that are very good players to step up and pick up the rifle and go.
You're the old man in the room now. I mean, Chase
Hansen's old man.
He's the old man, but at linebacker, he's only been playing this thing 6 months. You're the veteran guy in the room. How much, I know Coach Enna's there, but how much coaching have you been doing this fall on the field and in the classroom with so many new faces?
A lot. At least I feel like I have a lot. A lot of guys come to me and ask questions about the defense and this and that and schemes and stuff like that. And so I like to, help them out because I take pride in being, one of the generals on the field or being smart with the defense. And so, I like teaching guys this or that and explaining to them why we do this or why we scheme this way. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable in this defense, Cody? When do you feel like you really got it? When you felt like you were at home, you were comfortable with it, you weren't thinking out there? Was it your second year? I won't say first because that's very rare.
The first year was awful.
You're swimming then at that point in
time.
time.
There's nothing worse than being out there not knowing what's going on. It's awful.
Was second year? Was it last year? When did you feel like you felt most comfortable?
After my freshman season, when I came in that summer, I didn't know the defense very well and I was uncomfortable. And then going into my first spring, so I guess going into my sophomore year, the spring of my sophomore year, I really started learning the defense. And so I thought I knew it then. And I knew the basics of it. I knew my job and this and that. But not until the end of my sophomore season, going into my junior spring, is when I really knew the defense inside and out. So now I can. And so I've always known my job, but now I know what everyone's doing. And so I can tell the D-linemen what they're doing, the DBs, what's going on with them, the audibles they can give to certain formations, you know what I mean? So I'd say going into my junior years when I really started to know it. And even then, I've gotten better and better at it.
Well, I thought it became really noticeable about midway through last year because you started making plays and making you weren't just around the ball. You were the first one to the ball and beginning to make those plays. And I think that's why there were so much high hopes for you this year. Guys in front of you. We mentioned Penasini a minute ago. We know who Lecky is. He's a giant human being. But Putu Tau and Pita Tonga, they're sitting right in front of you. How did you feel like those guys? Because really, a couple of those guys are being thrust in for the first time. How did they play the other night?
They all played great. Obviously it's nice playing behind Lecky and stuff, how big he is, but all those dudes are way big, way strong. They're all very athletic too for how big they are. And playing behind them is so nice because they keep you clean. They keep the guards and center off you, and so it's very nice playing behind them.
Is it hard to see you around Lecky sometimes? Because those guys, like Penasini and those guys are like 6 foot, 6'1". Lecky's 6'4", almost 6'5", and he's that big too.
He's a grown man.
He really is.
Seeing behind him, I got to take maybe
take a little half step
couple
this
steps
way,
to your right or left, try to peek around him. He's a big dude.
Last thing, your brother's going to jump on with us here in a second. You had told me in fall camp, you're both seniors this year. Jackson redshirted, you're a true senior. How cool is it to be able to play with your brother and be out there with him? You guys grew up together. We know you're a real close family, but how cool is it to be able to share kind of this senior experience with him? It's
awesome. I mean, I didn't ever think it would be that way, but he came in and redshirted, and I didn't redshirt when I came in. So now we're both going to be seniors this year, and it's awesome knowing, we're both seniors together, true blood brothers, and so it's a pretty cool experience that I think a lot of guys have never experienced, and so. I think it's really cool.
You're the little brother. Was he hard on you?
There's only the little brother.
You're younger and you're smaller. Was he ever tough on you when you guys were growing up in the driveway and stuff like that?
We fought quite a bit, but
more so than normal brothers, or just normal brother stuff?
I think I rubbed him up more than he rubbed me up. Though.
Really?
I think so.
Jackson's over there shaking his head. We'll ask him about that coming up. One more thought. Where do you guys have to be better? It's hard to say when you only give up 58 yards, but where do you think you can be better defensively this week?
Better defensively. I think that you just got to break that down per position group. And as far as the backers go, overall we did our job. And I think it just comes down to little details as cleaning up your eyes and your reads, just faster reactions, things like that.
All right. Cody, thanks for jumping on.
Thank you, man.
Cody Barton with us here on the Coaches Show tonight, which is brought to you by our friends at Smith's. Low prices and market fresh. So now we'll get the other side of the Barton story. We'll see if he actually roughed him up or if Jackson's got another side of it. Jackson Barton joins us next on the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, presented by Smith's, right here from Learfield. Feeling as an offensive lineman than watching your running back pull away and into the distance after you've made a block? We can ask that question of our next guest. Jackson Barton, Utah starting left tackle and brother of the aforementioned Cody Barton, joining us here on the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show presented by Smith's tonight. Is that a good feeling when you see Zach and all you can see is number 2 getting further and further and further away downfield?
Oh, it's a great feeling just watching him get down there. But at the same time, we got to go catch him down there and go celebrate, and that kind of takes the wind out of you.
If I'm not mistaken, you were one of the first ones down there, weren't you? If I remember him celebrating in that end zone, were you one of the first ones to reach the end zone or not?
Sometimes. You know what? It just depends what the place.
Oh, that touchdown?
Yeah.
I think you were, because I remember you. There was probably a wide receiver out there first, but you were one of the first guys down there.
Yeah. So I'd like to just go celebrate because you know what? He's a very hard worker, very good player.
Zach is fantastic, and he had a good game the other night, but he's only as good sometimes as what you guys can do up front. I was talking to Coach Witt about this. First quarter, everybody seemed a little out of sync offensively. Tyler was, the running game was, the receivers were. You guys were even a little bit too. There had to have been some sort of a conversation, discussion, loud words being said from Coach Jim Harding on the sideline.
Loud words being said. That's the best way to put it.
So what changed? It was probably late first quarter, early second quarter that you guys really started to look like you got in sync.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that changed is once we got that first drive out the way, first couple, everything's out, especially that pick. Once we settled into the game and started just realize, all right, we need to take a breath and let's just do our game. We're all trying to do too much at once, expecting to just come out and roll over these guys. Once we settled in, and everything's just started clicking together. I mean, you saw it, holes were opening up, Zach was going downfield, wide receivers were catching balls, everything was going in like a puzzle piece.
So did you feel like from maybe the second quarter on, you guys played a lot better?
A lot better.
So where can you get better this week? Take me inside that room. What are some of the things Jim Harding's been talking to you guys about?
Coach Harding does a really good job of telling us how to approach things, like how to approach practice, how to approach film, how to approach what you do in your off time. And I think the biggest thing is how we're going to approach this game, not just kind of mosey on into this game. NIU's a lot better team, and I think the best way to come into this game is to go right off of snap one. No more just moseying all in. If we can just click on that first drive, then that's the best thing we can do.
NIU's a better team overall, but they're a better team up front where you'll see them because they've got one guy that's really good, one of the best in the country, Sutton Smith.
Yeah. So we've been watching film. He's a really good defensive end and a really hard worker. He makes most of his plays off his second effort, and so just me and Darren got our work cut out for us this week, but we just got to match him effort for effort.
Do they flip-flop him? Will he move to both ends?
Yeah, he plays both sides.
So you might see him a little bit, Darren might see him a little bit.
Yes.
So it just really depends on the setting. You may look up and there he is, and another down he may not be. You're playing next to two guys that rotated.
Right.
Ford and Numata. How is that for you? Is that tough for you, getting different guys on different series, or are you used to playing with them?
No, I'm used to playing with him. Coach Harding does a really good job in practice, making sure I get to see him in individual drills and crossovers, so it's really not that too difficult going into a game.
So what's it like, your senior year? I mentioned you playing with your brother Cody. You're a redshirt senior. He's a true senior. You put in your time here. Is it weird that you're already in your last year here at Utah? Honestly, it's weird for me because it feels like you just got here the other day as a freshman.
Man, 5 years, as long as that sounds, it does go by fast when you're doing what you love.
Who did you emulate your game after? Was there somebody that you, when you got here early on, that you kind of took some stuff from? Somebody take you underneath their wing?
A lot of the guys took me underneath their wing, like J.J. Dillman, Isaac Asiata, especially when I first got here. And the best I can say is I didn't necessarily emulate my game off a single one of them. I emulated my game of what I can do to the best of my abilities and how hard I can work on and off the field.
How much do you feel like you guys have improved year to date? A year ago at this time, you guys were really a work in progress. A bunch of guys that have been thrown together for the first time, including yourself, starting at least at the left tackle spot. So how far do you think you've come in the last year?
Oh, it's a night and day difference, especially when we were talking about it with especially during the transition of fall camp. It's the last year during fall camp, we had to learn a whole new offense with Coach Taylor, implementing what he was doing. And then this year, obviously having him back helped. And then just having the same guys on the offensive line, everything was just meshing together perfectly.
What's it like playing with your brother?
I love playing with my brother. I love seeing him across the line of the field, just give each other eye looks, all the words we need to say to each other, just in the eye contact we make for a split second.
Were you rough on him growing up? Did you hammer him in the driveway and places like that?
We hammered each other. You know what? He did give me a couple times, but I think I got him more than what he was letting on earlier, just to set the record straight.
So this week at Northern Illinois, you guys want to take care of business. Where specifically along the line, and maybe with you, do you guys have to be better than you were last week?
Like I said before, we got to come out, just snap one, ready to go, not just like moseying into the game, but also just knowing that their kind of defense is, they're not much of a pressure team. They're more of a base up front. Like, your front seven can't beat our front seven, so I feel like if offensive line brings their A game this week, we should have a really good game against them.
Is that a little challenge for you guys when somebody approaches it like that?
Yeah, exactly. Coach Harding challenges. This is going to be the week to challenge you guys. You're going to see we're tougher than you.
Well, we'll see what happens Saturday. Jackson, thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much.
Jackson Barton with us here on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's. Kyle Whittingham's back next. We'll talk to him about Sutton Smith, that defensive end, and the rest of the Northern Illinois team. Don't forget a 5:30 kickoff, Mountain Time, on Saturday. Our network pregame goes on the air at 3:30. Myself, Tom Hackett, and Scott Mitchell from DeKalb, Illinois. Back after this on the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show from Learfield. Whittingham Coaches Show presented by Smith's Marketplace. Low prices and market fresh. We're here every Tuesday night at 6:02 until right about 7 o'clock along the network lines in our flagship radio home, ESPN 700. So your opponent this week, first time in the history of the school Utah's ever played a team out of the MAC. You've never played a team from the Mid-American conference.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, first in the first meeting, obviously with Northern Illinois. It's unusual to travel to DeKalb, Illinois, but I'm sure you've seen some game tape now. They played Iowa at Iowa. They have a history of playing some P5 schools. What stood out when you watched it? It was a close game at halftime, right?
It was 3-0 all the way until mid-third quarter, and that's when Iowa started to pull away a little bit. But what you notice is they're physical up front. They stood toe-to-toe with Iowa and slugged it out. And like I said, very low-scoring, even game up until midway through the third. Then Iowa broke it open with a couple touchdowns. But you know, I liken them a lot like us. You know, as far as their mentality, they're blue collar. They're disciplined. They'll hit you, and they'll sit there, and they're very willing to slug it out with you.
Well, I know they've got one guy that jumps out on tape when you watch him. It's their defensive end, Sutton Smith. He's a consensus All-American. You don't get a lot of those guys at the non-P5 level, and he's big time. He had 14 sacks a year ago. I think he had one the other day against Iowa as well. What kind of a defensive end is he? Is he comparable to anybody you've had or somebody you've seen in the conference?
Well, he's not the biggest guy. You know, he's 6 foot, 6'1", 2 1/4, 230, something like that. You know, so. You know, Pita, Tomway.
Okay.
You know, he's a guy that relies on speed, quickness, relentless motor, and you know, just finds a way to make plays. He's one of those guys that always finds a way to be around the football.
Yeah, Jackson was saying you've got to stick with him because he may get you with that. If you think you've got him on the initial, you know, block or push, he may loop back around or he's not going to stop.
Exactly. He'll keep fighting you, and he plays from. You know, from snap to whistle all the way through.
I know you look a lot on the offensive side of the football, and you look at the other side, and they've got a quarterback who's a dual threat guy that will run it a little bit and throw it a little bit. Didn't have huge numbers the other day, but Marcus Childers, their quarterback, what stands out about him?
Well, he's a tough kid. He's a big kid. He's you know, 6 foot, but he's like 225. I mean, he's pretty thick and you know, very capable runner, and throws the ball well. And so he's got. You know, he's got those dual threat capabilities that you know, seems like most quarterbacks you face now have that, but he's got a good back that he gives the ball to, and he's got some receivers that are dangerous. Now, the one thing is they're playing a little bit out of their character this year because the tight ends are just not available right now.
Right.
And so they've changed their personnel groupings, and they've got a lot different look than they did last year, at least in the one game. You know, they could, you know, figure things out a different, you know, try to have a different approach this week, but much more 4 wide receiver sets and 11, you know, 1 receiver or 1 tight end, 1 back sets than they were last year.
I was going to say that's a little out of their norm because in recent years, really over the last decade, they've been a team that likes to run. QB run's been big, and they've averaged 250, 300 yards a game rushing the football.
Right, exactly. So you know, interesting to see what they determine is you know, what they need to do in the week to week. You know, from last week to this week in their preparation and what changes they make, and we got to be ready for, you know, obviously anything they decide to do.
A little bit smaller school, a little bit smaller stadium, probably not quite the facilities you guys have been used to in the Pac-12. Do you get the guys ready for all that, or do you just treat it like another game?
Treat it like another game. It's you know, once the ball's in the air, you don't know if there's 20,000 or 200,000 people in there.
Right.
You just get into game mode, and that's not going to be a factor at all. And believe me, there's not a chance that we're overlooking these guys. I'll tell you that right now, because they're a good football team, and what were they in the Orange Bowl 6 years ago?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. They've beaten 9 P5 schools in the last 15 years.
Fully aware of that. You know, Nebraska last year.
They're a little bit like what you guys were when you were in the Mountain West days, when you'd get your crack against the Oregons or the Cals or schools like that. You guys would take care of business.
Well, they're well coached and they're tough.
Yeah.
You're well coached and tough, you get a chance every week.
They're also, by the way, a team that's been to a bowl game 9 of the last 10 years as well. So they do well.
Hung with Duke last year in the bowl. That played it very tough.
Let's take our final timeout. We're going to come back. We'll answer some questions for you guys. Got a bunch of them lining up here. And if you want to shoot one in on text, 877-353-0700, or on Twitter at ESPN700Bill. Final segment with Kyle Whittingham next. This is Utah football and the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show from Learfield. Back on the Coaches Show tonight, wrapping it up from the Eccles football facility here on campus at the University of Utah. Just again, a reminder for you, 5:30 kickoff coming up on Saturday, Mountain Time, 6:30 Central Time from DeKalb, Illinois and Husky Stadium. Of course, myself, Tom Hackett, and Scott Mitchell will all be there. I've been told the booth is small, so we'll all do our best to cut weight and squeeze in on Saturday. Tom will be down on the sideline with Coach and the crew. Got a tweet in here from Tim. A guy named Tim Branham says wants to know what the halftime message was for your team.
Well, just to start playing like we're capable of, and not to continue to shoot ourselves in the foot on offense and give up a blocked field goal. I mean, just things that are uncharacteristic of us is what we needed to eliminate, and I thought we did a pretty good job of that in the second half. Although we didn't come out, I think it was a 3 and out the first series coming out of the break, but then we settled in and generated some offense.
Tim, thank you for your tweet. I'm sure you've given similar between-period messages to players on your teams in the past. Appreciate that. Steve wants to know, what's the defensive area of opportunity you emphasized with your team coming off that performance?
Defensive area of opportunity.
Meaning an area where you feel like you've got more opportunity to be better, I guess.
Takeaways,
yeah.
Without a doubt. Takeaways, that's something that, as we talked earlier, has to happen. And we've got to do two things. We've got to cut down on offensive takeaway or turnovers, and they had 3, which is too many. The other one was on special teams, so there's 4 overall. And we got to generate some. We got to be +1 or better.
If you can do that, I know you'll feel very good about things.
Right.
It's not going to be very often you can be -4 and win a game.
Yeah, not very often at all. You're really bucking the odds there.
A couple of other thoughts on this game coming up this weekend. In just a second, you get to watch a little football over the weekend. Anything stand out to you, either in the conference or around the country?
Watched Washington and Auburn, and that was a great game. And Washington had their opportunities there, and of course Auburn's a very athletic, fast football team. They got some players that are incredible. Watched Stanford, San Diego State. That was a close game for a while.
For a little while there, yeah.
And then I was kind of bouncing back at the commercials to the Wyoming-Washington State game, during the Auburn.
It took the Pirate a minute to get that offense going, but
fourth quarter.
Yeah, but then they got that throw game going a
Lyle
little bit.
was leading going in the fourth, wasn't it? Like 20-19 or something like that. But
Yeah.
then Washington State broke it open with 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
He's, I think he went through like 4 quarterbacks in fall camp before he finally decided on his guy.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Last question for the night. Does this group have what it takes to bring Sac Lake City back?
Well, we'll find out. I think Bradley and I off the edge is a good start. If Mika can continue to develop as a pass rusher, I know we're going to get good push from the inside. So there's an opportunity. We'll have to see, though. But there is a chance.
Join us on Saturday. Kyle, thanks.
Okay, Billy. Thank you.
We'll see you Saturday. Kyle Whittingham with us on the Smith's Coaches Show tonight. We'll be in DeKalb, Illinois on the air at 3:30 Mountain Time with a 5:30 kickoff for the Utes and the Huskies. We'll be back here next Tuesday night. We appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Thanks to Smith's for providing the great sponsorship here tonight and all the great food as well. Enjoy your evening. This is Utah football from Learfield. Good night.